All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Menachim Av, the Tilson and Wohl families, who have dedicated all the Shemar Joshos this month with sending their love from Eretz YIsrael and inviting us in Eretz Hashem to come and join them. Our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Dr. Moshe and Gavant, in honor of the bar mitzvah of their grandson, Matan Gavant, son of Aaron and Yehudit Gavant of Skokie, Illinois, on the occasion of his bar mitzvah this morning at the Kotel in Yerushalyim Ir Hakodesh. Mazel tov to the Bachar bar mitzvah. To celebrate our life cycle events, our children's life cycle events, and a rebuild Yerushalyim Ir Hakodesh. Amen. But with that, let us begin. A lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Today's daf is Nun Aleph 51. We are picking up in Eretz Hashem on Nun Amud Beis 50b, and we left off at Gufa. 2 lines up from the bottom. We are not going to move anywhere nearly as fast as we did on Matzei Tisha B'Av. Somebody asked me, you did 2 dapim in 1 hour. Why can't we move at that pace every day? I was like, okay, thank you for the positive feedback. Right? Thank you for positive feedback. Okay, and then I gave him a link to a different shir. In any event, so now let's go right there. Says the Gemara says Gufa. So we'll say we are in the middle of a very interesting sugya over here. So the Gemara says Gufa. Amarav. So let's remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit. We're dealing with the same statement of the Mishnah. The Mishnah told us that in order to establish chazaka, again, we're really reinforcing a couple of core concepts for us in Cheskas Habatim. In order to establish chazaka, you really need 3 things. What are the 3 things? Number 1, taina. Oh, no particular order, right? Taina. Taina means you have to make a claim as to how this land came into your possession, right? Classic example of taina would be, I bought this from Ruvain. Number two, residency, right? Or duration. You have to have been there for a period of 3 years. Although, as we've seen already, you don't always need residency. For example, as we saw in the case of kilkul, if you do something destructive, a destructive act could potentially establish residency even immediately. And then number 3, and I was really thinking, number 3 is really a derivative of number 1, which is, it has to be that the only reason you're on this land is because you own it. If there's another reason why you would be where you are, that ultimately precludes you from establishing chazaka. So a paradigmatic example of this would be a sharecropper, an aris. So an aris, right? An aris, Reuven comes to me after 3 years and says, I'm the owner of the land, v'haraya. I've been here for 3 years uncontested. And I say, of course you've been here for 3 years uncontested. You're my sharecropper. You work for me. I don't have to make I never have to make a macha with you. So again, because he had another reason to be there other than being the owner, that precludes him from making chazaka. The Mishnah went through a whole list of people who therefore can't establish chazaka on each other's properties. Among two of those group is a husband can't establish chazaka on his wife's property, and the wife can't establish chazaka on her husband's property. Logic being, it makes sense for a husband to be on his wife's property, makes sense for a wife to be on her husband's property. That's our sugya. So therefore the Gemara says as follows, Gufa, Amarav, Ein machziki b'nichse eshes ish. Now we'll say along the long lines over here, Rav came along and said, very interesting halacha, this was the end of yesterday's daf. Rav said, you can't make a chazaka on the property of a married woman. Now, what does that mean? So Rachel's married to Ruvain. So Rachel has property. I go ahead and I live on that property uncontested for 3 years. So now what happens? So now the Gemara says, I can't claim chazaka. But I lived on her property or utilized her property for 3 years uncontested. What could Rachel claim? Rachel could claim I was depending on my husband to go ahead and make that macha. Okay, so therefore Rav says, and therefore Rachel says, I didn't feel I needed to do it. My husband was going to do it, and therefore halacha l'maisa, that works. In machzikin b'nichse eshes ish. Top of Nun Aleph, v'dayani gola amru machzikin. The judges of the diaspora, and Rashi points out over here, this is Shmuel and Karno. So Shmuel and Karno, who were considered to be the eminent sages of the Gola of the diaspora. The Hagos Atziyun, they take out Karno and just ultimately have Shmuel, but okay, it's fine. The judges of the diaspora said, Machzikin, you can go ahead and make a chazaka. Now, what's their logic? Their logic is I don't understand, why does Rachel have to depend on her husband Reuven to make a macha? It's her property. She holds title. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, she should make her own macha. So therefore, the Gola said, and Rabbi said this cuts both ways. That's very nice. She should make her own macha. And therefore, if she didn't, someone in fact can establish chazaka on her property. So fundamental machlok is, can you make a chazaka on the property of a married woman? Rav saying no, because her failure to make a macha is not demonstrative of someone else's ownership, because halacha l'maisa, she could be depending on her husband to make a macha. Tayana Gola saying no, she should have made her own macha, and therefore failure to do so allows the occupier to go ahead and assert chazaka. Amar Rav, halacha kedehene Gola. So this is fascinating. So Rav, I must just understand, this is machlokes between Rav and the Dayana Gola, which essentially means it's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Rav comes along and says, the halacha follows Dayana Gola. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Kana Ravasi Rav, Hadr bar mar mishmaitei. So I don't say about it. You see what's happened over here? Right? Rav is having a machlokes with Dayana Gola, and then Rav says the halacha follows Dayana Gola. So it comes along Ravasi, right? Rav Kan Ravasi, and he says, Rav, Rebbe, what's going on over here? Right? Does this mean you retracted your position? Does this mean now you recanted and you hold like Shmuel? So no, Rav said, Amar Lahu Mistabra Amri Kid Rav Yosef. So Rav says like this, I happen to think that the Dayana Gola's position, in general, no, I still hold to my position, that halacha l'maisa, you can't make a chazaka on the property of a married woman, because her failure to make a macha is not demonstrative that she yields to someone else's ownership, because it could just be something that she was relying on her husband to make the macha. So what does it mean when Rav says that the halacha is like Dayana Gola? That's in the specific case of Rav Yosef. They say, what was Rav Yosef's case? Rav Yosef was at the end of yesterday's daf. Remember again, Rav Yosef's case was this situation of, let's call it, Rachel's married to Reuven. Shimon comes along, and let's say lives on a parcel of land owned by Rachel for a year while Reuven is alive. Reuven dies, and then Shimon continues to live on that land for 3 more years. Rav Yosef said, even according to the opinion, like Rav, that says that you can't make a chazaka on the property of a married woman, in this case, you can make the chazaka. Now why? There's a migo. What now? Again, remember, what's Shimon's claim? Shimon's claim is he bought the field from Reuven. Rachel, so what's his migo? His migo is, he didn't even have to say that he bought it from Reuven. What could he have said? I bought it from Rachel. And I lived here for 3 years uncontested. So because he doesn't make that claim, he could have made that claim, he doesn't make that claim, therefore he's believed to assert his chazaka. So even Rav agrees in that case that halacha l'maisa, the chazaka will work. So again, I will say, the knetch in that case is, I might have thought that the reason he can't establish chazaka is if you hold that you can't go ahead and create the chazaka on the property of a married woman, I would have said like this, Rachel assumes that Reuven made the macha during the year that Shimon was living on the property. Therefore, again, once a macha is made, you don't have to remake it every interval of time. So therefore, she never made it, even during the subsequent 3 years that her husband died. Kamash Malon, that kind of case doesn't work, because since, again, there was another unit of chazaka when she was widowed, she should have made a macha then. Failure to do so allows Shimon to go ahead and assert his ownership. So therefore, I will say, it turns out that there's still a machlokes. In other words, the machlokes Rav and Shmuel still applies. Can you make a chazak on the property of a married woman? So Rav says, absolutely not. Because her failure to make a macha, not demonstrative of ownership, because she thought her husband was going to make it. Shmuel, absolutely not. It's her property. She has an obligation to make a macha. She shouldn't rely on her husband. Her failure to do so ultimately allows someone else to go ahead and create a chazaka. So fundamental machlokes. The only exception is Rav will agree with Shmuel in this particular case of Rav Yosef. Beautiful. Let's go right there. So we'll say it's now just the opposite case. A woman, up until now we're talking about the inability of a man to make a chazaka on his wife's property. Now, we're going to focus on the inability of a woman to make a chazaka on her husband's property. So the Gemara says, Pshita. So we'll say, that's obvious. So we'll say, so just let's play this out. What would be the classic case in which a woman would go ahead and create chazaka or try to create chazaka on her husband's property? What's the easy, simple case? Rachel is married to Reuven. Reuven has property. Rachel is using the property. She's using it. So now, after 3 years of marriage, she comes along and she claims, I'm the owner of the property. Beis Din says, how do you want to support that claim? She says, very simple. I've been using the parcel of land for 3 years. For 3 years, uncontested. So the Gemara says, of course she can't establish chazaka pshita. Kevan the Islam mizoni hu de ka'achla. Sibbo says, it's very simple. What is Beis Din going to say? Rachel. So remember, Reuven owes you mizonos. So I will say it could very well be that the reason she was using the property uncontested is why was she using it? Why was she using it? As a form of her mizonos. Maybe instead of giving her money, for example, or giving her food, maybe he said to her, here's a parcel of land. The produce counts as your mizonos. And that's why she was able to use it uncontested for 3 years. So since she's entitled to mizonos, and since it's feasible that halacha l'maisa, she went ahead and it's feasible halacha l'maisa that she was using that parcel of land for mizonos. Therefore, she can't establish chazaka. To which the Gemara says, no, lo tzvicha di yichid la ara achrisi lemizona. So we'll say, no. What's the case over here? It's actually an interesting case. The case is where Reuven's married to Rachel, and Reuven says to Rachel, parcel A, that land, that's for your mizonos, right? So you are sustained from that land. The case that we're dealing with now is, so her mizonos comes from parcel A, she's utilizing parcel B. So I might have thought that since she's utilizing parcel B for 3 years uncontested, that shows her chazaka. Kamash malon, we assume that even in a case where a husband designates a particular parcel of land for his wife's mizonos, that doesn't preclude her from using his other land. And therefore, again, she can't establish chazaka even on his other parcels. Okay. To which the Gemara says, ha raya leish yesh. Now, listen, here's what's interesting. What happens? So what we can infer from all this is just stam. In a case where she's just using his property, so she can't establish chazaka. Okay, and that makes sense because it makes sense that a husband allows his wife to use his property. So therefore, again, because of that, she can't establish chazaka on his property. Now the Gemara says, but what if she were to produce a shtar? So she produces a document of sale, right? In the document of sale, what does it say? Reuven sold Rachel parcel B. So the Gemara says, it sounds like that should work, right? If a wife produces a document of sale that her husband sold her a parcel of land, that bepashtos, that transaction should work, and Rachel should now be the owner of the land. Now, listen, I watch this. The Gemara says, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Why wouldn't that work? So I'll say, this is fascinating. Lema, ligaluye zuzehu deboy. So I'll say, listen to this. The Gemara says, maybe he's not really selling her land. Rather, what is he doing? He is suspicious that she is storing away money. She's throwing away money. And so obviously all these cases come with their own shalom bias dynamics as well. And also I'll say, understand. The Gemara over here in these kind of cases is always very important because sometimes you read this like, what kind of marriage is this? Like, what a strange dynamic. So I'll say, so first of all, understand. The Gemara is a body of legal work, right? That's the goal over here. So therefore, we're not delving into relationship dynamics. We're trying to figure out the legality of certain things, and like in any legal situation, we're trying to figure out what the intent of the parties may be when entering into a transaction. So don't try to superimpose like a marriage dynamic on top of these cases, because that's not what the Gemara is trying to do over here. So the Gemara says like this. Maybe we're concerned about the following. Maybe Reuven, who's married to Rachel, is concerned that Rachel is not being forthcoming with her finances. Remember, again, a husband is obligated to support his wife. Because of that obligation, Chazal said, therefore, she should give him her earnings. Okay, now remember, as we saw, she has every right to say, no, thank you. You keep your mizonos, I'll keep my earnings. That's fine. But if she takes mizonos, she has an obligation, like a quid pro quo, to go ahead and give over her earnings to her husband. He's concerned that she's not being forthcoming about her finances, and therefore she's hiding away money. So Reuven has this great chap. What does he want to do? He wants to sell her property. Now, of course, instead of just using good old conversation, right, he decides to go ahead and employ a little bit of a ruse. What's his ruse? I'm going to sell her property. Now, I'll say, in order to buy property, what do you need? Money, right? So therefore he says, I'm going to sell her property. She's going to pay, and that's how I'm going to discover all of the money hidden away. That's his grand plan over here. So the Gemara says, So maybe he's not really intent on selling her property. Rather, what is he doing? He's trying to uncover hidden funds. Take a look at Rashi, Rashbam. Reuven's concerned that Rachel has hidden away money from him. This Gavanti legalos li ma'osel. Ubecheskos ma'os shali lakachtim miyada. V'lo l'shem mecher, v'lo l'das kinyan mechira. So now let's play this out. So now Reuven goes over to Rachel, says, I'll say the field's going to be, whatever it is, $1,000. Rachel pays $1,000. And now in Reuven's mind, what's happened over here? He's gotten his money. His money. He never had any intention to sell. There's no real kinyan over here. Rather, this is just the ruse by which he's able to go ahead and get money that he feels he's rightfully entitled to already. So I'll say, interestingly enough, now here's what's fascinating. So let's just follow the train of thought over here. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah said that a husband can't establish chazaka on his wife's property. Okay? Why? I'm sorry, what are we doing here? Sorry. A wife can't establish chazaka on her husband's property. Why? Because the assumption is that halacha l'maisa, a husband allows his wife to use her to use his property. And therefore, even if she has one field set aside from his oros and she's using a different field, she still can't establish chazaka. So the Gemara says, we can infer from this that if halacha l'maisa, a husband really sold his wife a parcel of land, a real estate transaction, that it works. The Gemara says, but one second, why should it work? Maybe he could taina, I'm not really selling her the land. I'm just have a suspicion that she's hiding away money from me. And this is the way of discovering the money and getting back money that husband feels I'm rightfully entitled to. Shamas mina, what do we learn from here? Suppose say, but what you see from here is that, no, we don't say that. That halacha l'maisa, if there is a real transaction and he actually sells her the land, that is a legitimate real estate sale. And we do not say that it's a ruse to try to discover hidden money. To which the Gemara said, Lo, ema ha raya yesh b'shtar matana. Maybe now I will say, maybe the only time that maybe a real estate transaction between husband and wife could be considered to be an actual binding real estate transaction is when it's a matana, when it's a gift. Because when it's a gift, then what? Then ultimately, again, there's no money being exchanged. So that's when we say that the husband has no other motive but to convey real estate to his wife. But maybe in a case of sale, maybe in that case, the transaction is not considered to be valid. Why? Because we're concerned that what is he really trying to do? He's just trying to uncover money that he feels she may have hidden from him. So we'll say, so now where we're holding right now is we're trying to figure out, it's the same, I just want to point out, it's the same conversation that we were having before, just in the opposite direction. Right? Before we're trying to figure out under what circumstances could a wife sell a husband property? Now we're just trying to figure out just the opposite. Under what circumstances could a husband sell his wife property? So now there are two possibilities. Possibility one is that no, a husband can sell his wife property, and that's it. She pays for it, like any other transaction. She pays for it, and now she's the owner. The possibility, the problem with that might be is that maybe it's not a genuine transaction, because he's actually concerned that she's hiding away money. How does he figure this out? How does he discover she's hiding away money? It's very simple. Create the appearance of a real estate transaction, get her to go ahead and, quote unquote, pay, but he's not really transferring land. Rather, what is he doing? He's getting, quote unquote, his money back. But everyone would agree, it appears, that in a matana case, where he gifts her property, that will be a valid transaction, because there's no money exchanging hands. Therefore, the only reason he'd be going out and gifting it to her is because he really wants to convey ownership. So let's analyze this. So the Gemara says as follows: Amrli Rav Nachman Rav Huna. Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, Lo havamar gaban ba'arta betchuma. So I'll say this is great. So Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, you were not with us last evening at the boundary in the tchum. The Rashbam points out over here, tchuma refers to the base medrash. Refers to the base medrash, right? And the base medrash why was the base medrash at the tchum, at the boundary, right, the outskirts of the town? Because we will say if the base medrash is at the edge of the tchum, it makes it accessible to multiple bordering towns as well. So this is beautiful. So Rav Nachman says, Rav Huna, you were not with us last night in the base medrash. Darminan mili ma'al yasa. we were doing such a good sugya. We'll say, by the way, this Gemara is incredibly important. What does this Gemara show you? In life, you have to have someone who holds you accountable. You have to have someone where if you don't show up to shir, right, they are going to call you, to message you incessantly until you have no choice but to get your tired body out of bed. And he's going to call you on the excuses. I'm too tired, I went to sleep too late, my friend was singing the national anthem, whatever it is, whatever excuses you could come up with, you have to have someone who is going to hold you accountable. Because I will say, most of us, right, inherently, we're lazy. Human beings, right, people are made of matter. Matter is naturally at rest until it is acted upon. That's the nature, that's the way the world works. It's just science. So I will say, so sometimes we're like self-starters, right? And we're able to get ourselves moving. But a lot of times we're not. And that's okay. That's just, it's the nature of human beings. To have someone in your life who pushes you, who holds you accountable, and again, when you try to give your excuses, is going to call you out on them and say, come on, you're better than that, is one of the most important things in life. Because without that, most of us just kind of end up settling into a place of mediocrity. So sometimes I'll do what I'm supposed to do, and sometimes I won't. And when I don't, I make up a million different excuses as to why I don't have to. That's why you got to have someone in your life who's going to hold your feet to the fire, someone in your life who's going to push you, just not make you feel bad, but is going to push you to help you become the best version of yourself. So it's so beautiful over here. Even Rav Nachman says, Rav Huna, where were you, right? You missed a really good one in the Beis Medrash last night, right? It was really nice in the Beis Medrash last night. So ultimately, again, if Rav Huna has it, alachas kama v'kam. This is the famous statement of Choni Ma'agel, o chavrusa, o mitusa. Give me a good friend who's going to hold me accountable, or give me death. Without someone to push me, without someone to hold me accountable, at the end of the day, again, I will say just the nature matter is at rest until acted upon. Without someone to hold me accountable, most times we just end up kind of sliding into that mediocre position in life. The Gemara goes, right, so what is my mima, your sister was a girl, so said, no, tell me, what did you talk about? What's the good stuff that I missed? So the Gemara said, Amocher sadali ishto kansa. Oh, what do we speak about in Shir? We spoke about in Shir that if a man sells a field to his wife, it is a valid transaction, and we don't say that he was just trying to uncover hidden money. So I'll say this was the topic of discussion last night in the Beis Medrash, that a husband, Reuven, sells a field to his wife. We assume that is a bona fide real estate transaction, and we do not ultimately say that he was just trying to uncover money that she was hiding away. Amalei Pshita. So we'll say ultimately again, so listen to this. So Rav Huna said, okay, that's kind of obvious. In other words, what's makes sense? Why? This is fascinating. I'll tell you why. Rav Huna makes an amazing observation. Rav Huna says, the truth is, the reason the transaction should work is because a real estate transaction works even without money. After all, we learned, the Gemara says, Dal zuzim yahacha, take away the money, v'tikni b'shtara, because the husband, she should acquire the transaction, she should acquire the property even just with the shtar. Milo tana, did we not learn? Nechasin sheish l'nachrayis nikne b'kesef v'shtar v'chazaga. You could go and acquire real property in three ways, right? Kesef, money, shtar, document, and chazaka, proprietary act. So I will say, what Rav Huna was trying to highlight over here is as follows. He's selling her property, right? What is he selling her property with? Right? What is he selling her property with? The transaction is recorded in shtar, and she's paying for it. So the whole concern over here is he really selling it to her? Maybe this is just a ruse in order to discover the money that he thinks that she's hiding away. So Rav Huna says, the truth is, but there's a shtar. So even without the money, she should become the owners. Don't let the money, in general, right? Don't let the money cloud the issue, right? At the end of the day, there's a shtar, and the shtar should be enough to make her the owner ultimately of the property. Amrlei, v'lavit marla, did we not learn about this? Amr Shmuel, lo shana el b'shtar matana, aval b'shtar mecher, lo kana ad sheyitin lo dameha. So we'll say, to which Rav Nachman responded, no, Rav Huna, that's not true. That's not true. When does shtar acquire, when we say that shtar acquires property, how does shtar acquire property? Matana, with a gift. Because with a gift, there's no other form of consideration that is given. So therefore, again, when no money exchanges hands, then it is clear that it is the shtar that is affecting the transaction. But when you are doing a sale, what affects the transaction? What affects the transaction? Money. What's the role of the shtar? What's the role of the shtar? Raya. It's just proof. It's just proof. So no. So Rav Nachman says back to Rav Huna, you're really clouding two different issues. Right? You're merging two different issues that don't belong. In other words, when there's money affects the transaction. And the shtar is a raya, is a proof that the transaction occurred. When it's just a matana, or not just when it is a matana, that's when shtar itself affects the transaction. But didn't Rav Hamnuna comment on that? And he said, "B'shtar ketzad." What's the case of shtar? Kasav lo an niyar o al acheres afa pi she'ein bo shava pruta. That if a person wrote, right, it's just a regular case of sale. Person writes on a niyar, piece of paper. I think Gemara is unprocessed parchment. Al acheres of harishar afa pi she'ein bo shava pruta. Even though the item upon which I am writing is not worth a pruta, sadai mechura lacha. Sadai kinuya lacha harize mechura unesuna. So we'll say, what do you see from here? What do you see from here? That the lashon that Rav Hamnuna is using by shtar is a lashon of sale. So they're clearly looking at shtar not just as a vehicle of conveyance for matana, but they're looking at shtar as a vehicle of conveyance for mecher. So you see that even in a case of sale, where money is being offered, shtar still has the ability to affect the transaction. In which case, Rav Huna's statement is a good one. He's like, guys, what are you getting? Don't get sidetracked by the money. Don't get sidetracked by the money, right? This whole thing over here about a husband's ability, right? When a husband sells his wife property, is that a valid transaction or not? The whole thing that's clouding that whole situation is maybe he's just doing it to discover money that he thinks that she's hidden away that he's rightfully entitled to. And therefore maybe the transaction is not really valid. To which Rav Huna is essentially saying, no, it works because a real estate transaction can be accomplished by shtar by itself even without money. So just say, of course the transaction is valid, because halacha l'maaseh he conveyed to her with shtar. So Rav Nachman was concerned that no, shtar only works as part of matana, it doesn't work as mecher. To which Rav Huna just showed that no, it will say the lashon of the shtar is, with this shtar, again, the field is sold to you, which shows you that even with money, shtar could affect conveyance of real estate. So the Gemara says, "Hu mosiv la v'hu mafarik la." So he raised the question. He answers it. B'mocher sadeo mipnei ra'asa. So I'll say this might be a different case. When do we say? I'll say in general. So here's the Gemara suggesting. In general, the halacha is like this: when you're dealing with a sale of property, what affects that sale? Right? What solidifies? What concretizes the sale? Money. Shtar really is just there as a proof. What we call raya that the transaction occurred. Because in general, we'll say, think about this just a moment. If I'm selling something for money, right, the only time I'm really ready to enter into the transaction is when that money's in my hand, right? Very nice that there's a shtar, but I'm not willing to convey ownership through the shtar. I'm conveying ownership ultimately through money. There may be one exception to that. What's the exception to that? If I'm selling something of inferior quality. So I say in general, when you're selling something of inferior quality, what is the interest of the seller? What's the interest of the seller? To get it sold as quickly as possible and just be able to say those two golden words, no backsies, right? No backsies. That's it. I want to be able to sell it and I want to be done. In a case like that, I would be willing to convey ownership through the shtar even before the money gets to my hand. So in a normal real estate transaction, if there's a shtar, and again, if I'm gifting something, say, everybody agrees that with a gift, the shtar is the primary vehicle of conveyance. But if I'm selling something, then really, again, the transaction is not done until the money gets to my hand. However, if I'm selling something inferior, I'm more than happy to go ahead and solidify this with the shtar. And okay, I'll wait for the money a little bit. I'm just more interested in offloading this as quickly as possible. So I'll say, that's kind of like that's kind of the balance we're establishing over here. So I will say, so where the Gemara seems to be holding up over here is that halacha l'maisa, when you're selling real estate, right? Where you're selling real estate for money, obviously, so the transaction is only solidified when the purchaser pays. The shtar is the shtar raya. Gift, obviously, again, can be affected through shtar. The one exception might be when you're selling inferior land, in which case you'd be willing to go ahead and solidify the transaction, even just with the document before the conveyance of money. Fine. So the Gemara says, but 1 second. For Rashi says, they will say, now remember, the wrinkle in all of this is the fact that when the Brisa illustrates shtar, it says sadai mechura lacha, right? So, which sounds like it is the shtar that is affecting the transaction. Now, I'll say one more interpretation. Could very well be like this: that in fact, in the case of shtar, we'll say is always shtar matana. Right? When we speak about that real property could be acquired through a shtar, that means matana. That means a gift can be acquired through a shtar. So the Gemara says, here's the problem. If it's a gift, then why is it phrased as sadai mechura lacha? I feel this all too. I'll tell you why the Gemara says matana bikesh litino. No, it's really matana. So we'll say velama kasav lo b'lashon mecher. So why is a matana phrased as a sale? Kedil yafos kocho, in order to go ahead and bolster the strength of the recipient. They will say, watch this. This is fascinating. So we'll say, if halacha l'maisa, what's the difference between selling something to someone and gifting something to someone? What's the difference? Obviously, primary difference is if I'm selling, I'm getting money. If I'm gifting, I'm getting nothing, right? So, but there's another big distinction. When you sell real property, the assumption of whenever you sell real estate, a sale of real estate usually comes with achrayus, a guarantee that if somebody seizes the property from the purchaser, I, the seller, will make them whole. Gifts don't come with guarantees, right? If I gift a piece of real estate to Ruvain and a creditor of mine comes and seizes that from Ruvain, okay, sorry, but you have no recourse. So I'll say it's very interesting. Now, technically speaking, you can give someone a gift with achrayus. You can do that. So the Gemara says something amazing. The Gemara says, in the case of shtar in the Raisa, where it says, how do you acquire it through shtar? A person writes, sadai mechura lacha. My field is sold to you. The Gemara wants to suggest, it's fascinating, that's a gift. That's not a case of a sale. That's a gift case. It's a gift case, but if it's a gift case, then why is someone writing, my property is sold to you? What's the answer? Because I will say, that is a gift, right? What am I saying? I'm gifting it to you, but I'm gifting it to you with the power of a sale. What does it mean to gift someone property with the power of a sale? It means that if my creditor comes and seizes this gifted property to you, you have recourse against me, which is incredible. Incredible. Okay, let's go back there. By the way, we still are mired in this original machlokes over here. In other words, can a husband sell property to his wife, and it's just a regular real estate transaction, like between any other two adults? Or no, any time a husband goes in and sells property to his wife, it's not really a legitimate sale. Rather, what is it? It's a ruse in order to find if she's hiding money or not. Okay, that's our machlokes. So the Gemara says as follows: Meisei, lava mina eved v'shichraro mina isha v'girsha ein lahen alav klum. We'll say a very interesting case. Let's say Ruvain has an eved, Eved Kanani, and he borrowed money from his eved, and then he subsequently emancipates his eved. Or, for that matter again, Ruvain borrows money from his wife, and then they get divorced. What's talacha? Ein lo alein klum. Neither the eved nor the ex-wife have any claim of repayment from Ruvain. Very interesting. So the Gemara says, "My taima." Now, what exactly is the logic there? This is fast. Listen to this. I will say, because it must be that in both of these cases, what is Ruvain suspect of? Ruvain is suspect that his wife is hiding away money. So he quote unquote borrows money from her. Now, why is he borrowing money from her? to demonstrate that indeed she has money that she has been hiding away, that he had a rightful entitlement to, and the loan was just the ruse in order to go ahead and get the money. Same thing with the Eved. We're not worried about the Eved case right now. We're focusing on the woman. So the Gemara says, so what do you see from here? You see from here that when a husband engages in a transaction with his wife, ultimately, again, maybe the transaction is not really valid, but the whole thing is just about uncovering what he suspects are hidden away monies. To which the Gemara says, no, that's not. Therefore, the Gemara wants to prove based on this, same idea when a husband sells his wife property, it's not really a sale, but rather what is he doing? He's uncovering hidden money. To which the Gemara says, no, that's not a good case. I'll tell you why. So the Gemara says, Shani hasam delonecha le l'shavye nafshe eved lova leish malba. They both say that's different because a person in general is very reticent to borrow money from someone. Right? Why? Because Rabbi says the pasuk in Mishlei says, right, the person who borrows becomes a slave to the lender. Okay, we all know this, right? When you borrow money from someone, so there's a shibud, there's a sense of servitude that sometimes I have to, but no. So we'll say, so therefore, again, there is no way that a master would ever willingly borrow money from his Eved, unless, of course, he has an idea. Same way that in general, at least societally, a husband would never borrow money from his wife. Right? In both of those cases, no one would want to create that type of almost sense of servitude to someone else. The only reason he's doing this must be to uncover borrowed money. But you can't apply that logic to a real estate transaction. In other words, it could very well be that a husband is just engaging in a regular real estate transaction with his wife, and not necessarily to uncover money, but rather, again, just to sell property. So we're still stuck. Shalach Rav Huna bar Avin. Hamocher sadele ishto kansa. Rav Huna bar Avin says, husband sells property to his wife. Reuben sells property to Rachel. Kansa, she acquires it. It works. Amud beis will say. Amud beis ubal ochel peros. And ultimately, again, the husband gets to eat peros from this property, which I will say is interesting, right? So the husband is selling property to his wife. So part one is transaction works. And we do not say that he's simply trying to uncover hidden money, but rather, again, the transaction works. Now I will say, therefore, Rachel is the proud owner of new property. Now I will say, but remember, Reuven has peros. Right, Reuven has usage rights of any property that she owns. So interestingly enough, she sells him the property, and ultimately he gets rest. Now, by the way, I want to point out, obviously, you could stipulate, in other words, if you assume the transaction is a legitimate transaction, they can stipulate whatever they want. In other words, she could say, I'm buying the property, with the condition that you have no payros. So she can do that, and if he consents that, of course, that it works. The Gemara is talking about the default setting, right? The default setting is husband has usage rights while wife retains title. So therefore, again, so Rav Huna bar Avin saying, real estate transaction to a wife works, and he gets payros. Baram, Rabbi Amma, Rabbi Avo, V'chol Gedolei Hadar Amru, B'matana Bikesh Litnu Lo. So we'll say, listen to this. Rabbi Amma, Rabbi Avo, all the Gedolei Hadar, they said, by the way, right, the real case over here is he's giving it to her as a matana. As a matana. Look into Rashbam for just a moment. Actually, before we get to that, V'lama kasav al shum mecher. Ultimately, again, why did he write it as a mecher? So the case over here actually is not where he's selling her property. He's gifting her property. But if he's gifting her property, then why did he write it, right? Why did they write the transaction down as a sale? So we just said before, Kediliapo says kocha. Actually, what he's trying to do is trying to bolster her standing. So really, he's gifting her property. If he's gifting her property, then why write it as a sale? In order to bolster her rights. That if one of his creditors were to come and to seize this property from Rachel, then what? She would have recourse against her husband Reuven. All right, what's going on over here? Take a look at Rashbam. Matana bikesh litolo, v'lo yochal peros ki damina lekama. Matana kansa ve'ein haba ochal peros umiu b'mocher lechabero ein lomar kein she'inu avo kolchach. So it's actually very interesting. So we're going to see, the Gemara is going to flesh this out in just a little bit. Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Avo say b'pashtos, the case over here is not where he's selling her property, but rather he's gifting her property. We're going to see about say, therefore, as a result of gifting her property, the husband does not get payros. We're going to see this a little bit clearer in just a moment. The Gemara is assuming over here that it must be, if it's a teen husband and wife, that he's not selling her something, rather he's gifting it to her. If he's gifting it to her, then why is it phrased as a sale? Once again, in order to bolster her standing. That should one of his creditors seize this property from her, she has recourse against him to be made whole. Okay, so let's analyze. So it says, Meisvei, lava mina eved b'shichara mina isha v'girsha, ein lahen alav klum. So I'll say, case we just said before. So Ruvain borrows money from his Eved Kanani, or Ruvain borrows money from his wife Rachel, and then he divorces her. Then I will say, ultimately, again, she has no recourse for repayment. So the Gemara says, my time, why is that? Because why? Because we assume he wasn't really borrowing money from her. Rather, what was he doing? He was trying to uncover, he suspected that she had money that she was hiding away from him. This was his way of discovering that hidden away money. And therefore, Allah he doesn't have to pay her back anything. So we'll say, so once again, what does that show you? That shows you that when a husband engages in a transaction with his wife, ultimately, it's not a bona fide transaction, but rather, again, what is it? It's a mechanism through which to discover money that she's hidden away. To which the Gemara says, no. Once again, shiny hasam delo l'shavye inish eved lova leishmalva. The loan case is different. The loan case is different than transactions. People don't willingly borrow money. In other words, borrowing money puts me in a compromised state vis-a-vis the lender. And especially in these type of relationships, it doesn't make sense that Reuben is going to do this with his wife Rachel. When it comes to a loan, the only reason, quote unquote, the husband would be borrowing money from his wife is because he has a strong suspicion that she is hiding funds that he's rightfully entitled to. That's the only reason to do that. But that has nothing to do with a real estate transaction or any other actual business transaction, which could still be legitimate. Amarav. So that was just brought down only because Rav Huna said that a sale does work. They were then trying to go ahead and challenge that. Once again, the Gemara makes a distinction between borrowing money from a wife versus selling property to a wife. Okay, let's go back there. Amarav. So again, the good news is we're going on a lot of twists and turns, but we're still in the same exact sugya, which is, what is the nature of a real estate transaction between a husband and wife? A husband sells his wife property. Is it just regular transaction and that's it? Or no? Or that the goal over here is to discover hidden away money? The other good thing that we also have seen is, it sounds like, based on everything we've seen, that if he gifted her property, then what's the halacha? Everyone agrees that works. Right? Because in that case, again, there's no, what else would it be other than a gift? There's no consideration that's being given. There's no money that's changing hands. So therefore, everyone's going to agree a gift works. The Shaila just says, what's the nature of a sale? So let's go back there. So the Gemara says as follows. Amarav, hamocher sadali isho kansa. So Rav said before that if a husband sells property to his wife, she's acquired it. V'habal ochel peros. And the husband gets usage. Okay, no different than any other case where the wife owns the title, right? Wife has title and husband gets usage. However, again, b'matana kansa, what if a husband gifts his wife property? B'matana kansa, so a gift, she acquires. Ve'ein haba ochel peros. Interestingly enough, in that case of a gift, a husband doesn't get peros. Okay, hold on to all these positions. Rabbi Elazar says, echazeh ve'echazeh kansa, ve'ein haba ochel peros. Rabbi Elazar holds in both these cases, a sale or a gift, wife acquires, and husband does not get peros. So I will say, fundamental machlokes, Rav and Rabbi Elazar. Rav saying in the case of a sale, right, it works, and husband gets peros. In the case of a matana, works, husband does not get peros. Rabbi Elazar, in both cases, sale, matana works, and in neither case does husband get peros. All right, so let's analyze. We have to obviously say what's happening over here. So the Gemara says, so first of all, take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says, "Matana kansa ve'ina bal ochal peros." Denosein ba'ayin yafa nosein. So we'll say just a word about this because it's actually quite fascinating. Now let's say there is a fundamental machlokes in human nature that when people give gifts, how do people give gifts? Do people give gifts what we call ba'ayin yafa or ba'ayin ra? Do people give gifts ultimately again, in a kind, generous way, or in a more stingy way? Which is interesting because since you're giving a gift already, right? But so the Gemara is assuming over here that everyone agrees that when you give a gift is given ba'ayin yafa. It's always given with generosity. Now, how does generosity manifest itself in this way? That if the husband is gifting property to his wife, how is he gifting it to her? In totality. And what does in totality mean? That he has no peiros. Fascinating, right? So both Rav and Rabbi Lazar both agree with this idea that a no-sin matana, no-sin ba'ayin yofa, you give a gift, you give a full generosity. Generosity in this case, the husband says, it's totally yours. I have nothing in it, even peiros. The machlokes will be in the sale case. Rav says a husband has peiros in a sale case. Rabbi Lazar says a husband doesn't have peiros in a sale case. Okay, so we'll analyze this. So there's Ava Rav Chisda of the Rabbi Lazar. So Rav Chisda had a case like this, and he passed in like Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar, bepashtos, meaning that he had a case where a husband sold property to the wife, and again he passed like Rabbi Lazar that the husband doesn't have peiros. Amrulei Rav Ukva, Rav Nechemia, B'nei Bansei D'Rav, L'Rav. So we'll say interest of Rav Ukva and Rav Nechemia, the grandsons of Rav, the sons of the daughter of Rav, said to Rav, said to Rav, Rav Chisda, Shavik Ma Rav Revi, Va'abdik Rav Zutra. Had you literally again forsaken the opinions of the great ones and paskined like the smaller ones, in other words, you have gone ahead and essentially left behind the position of Rav, and you paskined like Rabbi Lazar. So we'll say Rav was greater than Rabbi Lazar. Amrlei, va'ananamni karav Ravi Avdi. No, I'm passing like Rav as well. T'chi asin Ravin Rabbi Yochanan echad zeh v'echad zeh kansa ve'ein habal ochal peros. Because also Rabbi Yochanan came along, and Rabbi Yochanan ultimately again was a contemporary of Rav, and he said that halacha l'maisa in both cases, a sale and a gift, the wife acquires the property, and the husband doesn't have peiros. So I will say, so therefore again, Rav Chisda justified his reliance on Rabbi Lazar's position, because ultimately again there were other great people that sided with Rabbi Lazar as well, like Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Rava, so Rava said as follows, Hilchasa, the halacha is as follows, Hamocher sadal ishtalo kansa, va'abal elchol peiros. So we'll say, so Rava says like this, the halacha is that if a husband sells a field to his wife, she does not acquire it, meaning the sale is not good, and he eats peiros. I will say, now obviously, the Gemara is going to question, that doesn't make any sense, right? In other words, if the sale is not good, then the property belongs to him. If the property belongs to him, then there's not a din of peiros. The Gemara says, V'matana, kansa ve'ein habal ochal peiros. Ultimately, again, with matana, she acquires it, and ultimately the husband does not eat peiros. So I will say, the Gemara says, Tarti, how could both of those things be true? I will say, I'm not going to rush. We're going to stop over here for today. I know we're right by a 2 dots. Stop over here for today. So I will say, so we're ending off, and again, where are we ending off? Here's what we know. We know that if a husband gifts property to his wife, ultimately, again, the transaction works. Does he have peiros or not in that matana? That seems to be a human nature machlokes of ba'ayin yofa or ba'ayin ra, so to be determined. But ultimately, again, our great outstanding question is, what happens when he sells her the property? Does the sale work or not? And then again, by extension, if the sale does work, does he have peiros? And Miras Hashem resolution tomorrow. Shkoyach. All right, Chavra, have a great day, everyone. Great to see everyone.